Cool. All right, this is the last short session of the day, depending on how long we take to make some prescription maps. Just wanted to go through at the end on a bit of a different tangent on how to use some of your precision ag map layers to, I suppose, carry out management practices in other areas of your farm that you might not have thought of. So usually we've been looking at these through very much a soil analysis or variable rate or input sort of way, and I guess there's lots of other things you can use them for as well. So as I said right at the start, map data can be an investment. You know, we've spoken about plenty of times, it's going to cost you a certain amount of dollars per hectare, so it makes sense to use these layers at every opportunity. And we find this on our own farm that, you know, we had our EM38 surveys taken back in 2008, I think, and yeah, that we might not look at them for 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden we'll pull them back out for something or pull a pH map out for something, and yeah, they're just in there to use when you need them. So the other thing that I think is just massive in its amount of uses is your NDVI satellite imagery. So this really helps you familiarise patterns throughout the year on the behaviour of your crop and how that sort of equates to the yield map or the amount of grain you got at the end of the year. Just to give you a little bit of background on NDVI, it is basically all coming off the same 2 satellites, so it doesn't matter which provider you go with. It's either coming off a Sentinel satellite or a Landsat satellite, and that is giving you an image every 7 to 10 days, provided that there's less than 10% cloud cover. So whether you're looking at it in AgWorld, which is provided by StatterMap, PCTs is provided by StatterMap, or any other platform, that's the 2 satellites. What you're going to be looking at though is a differing probably algorithm or colour scale, which is going to make your maps look slightly different depending on how they choose to do that. But yeah, that's just the point I wanted to make, is that NDVI is out there and it's cheap, so probably a good one to start with. So just on that, with the algorithms that come off of NDVI imagery, I'm going to start with an example here. Dave's here, so we can probably get him to explain it even better than I can for what was going through his head when he chose to do this. But Dave's got some farming land up north of the Orrery-Wilmington bitumen, which is I guess what we call marginal country, and yeah, just
it's only about 2 paddocks further north of me that get cropped.
Yep, so it's up there, so you can see there's Wilmington there, over to Orrery, and that's where it is, up at Amington. So Dave's just started off and he's got a couple of harvests in the system now with PCTA Cloud, and has been looking at the NDVI data. But one of the new algorithms that's sort of being produced off the NDVI data is a moisture stress indicator map, and we're still learning about that. But Dave, did you want to explain? I'll go to the next slide. There is your NDVI map, and I've also got your yield map from the end of the year. But did you want to sort of explain what you're thinking there when you went and did your... I'll put the bars in.
Yeah. Pretty much, we're getting nervous because we'd only had just over 100 mil of rain, and it didn't look like it was raining. And it was a pretty nice barley crop, and it was just falling in a heap. It was running out of moisture, and there was an argument going on between generations as to whether the sheep should go in. Dad was, no, don't put the sheep in, it rain, it'll be good. I'm like, nah, I'm not quite so cool. And we just signed on with Jess, and I was playing with all the stuff and all the indices, and the moisture stress indicator, when I looked at it over this whole block, so I had the whole 2,000 acre block up there loaded, showed this paddock was off the charts down there. When you look at it there just purely on that paddock, it doesn't look too bad, but when you looked at it globally over the whole block, it was in all sorts of trouble, and you could sort of see the beginnings of that. You know how barley starts to get real pointy and nasty, and so then I started talking with Jess after that, trying to work out a way to solve the argument between Dad and myself as to which way to go, whether I was put the sheep in it. other than when he was off the place and I could go and just open the gate myself, or get a bit of buy-in from both sides so we didn't have shit going in and out. And pretty much went through it. Happened over about a 3-week period of going backwards and forwards with phone calls to Jess, looking at what was happening on the ground, trying to work out how to do it. But eventually we got to the stage where I think it was NDVI map I eventually went off, because the areas that were going to be okay for harvest had gone to head, and so they were showing much less dense. Well, you look, that's the NDVI map there, isn't it?
Yeah, actually,
I reckon it is.
I look really closely. It's an SPAA map, which is Saturn vegetation index.
So everywhere that was sort of reddish had gone to head. Everywhere else hadn't gone to head, and so I went off of that. I went and loaded a couple of points from that onto my phone to go on ground truth exactly what was happening, so I could make a call on how much I thought was going to actually be harvestable and how much wasn't. Ended up that I harvested, put the sheep on it, got 6 weeks grazing out of it, but I actually ended up going and sticking the header over because the plan was at that stage we're putting wheat on the paddock, and I didn't want to have any barley floating around the place, so I just went and tidied it up. But it was also good to ground truth what was going on out there. It gave me a bit more confident that going forwards we can definitely start using this as a decision making tool.
Given how far away this block is, I know we've got a lot of driving, but will this help monitoring? I know you're going up there anyway to check stuff, but... And
especially because the paddocks, like everything, you're talking 400 odd acre paddocks, 400 to 500 acre paddocks out there. You think you're going over and getting a good general look, but you're not.
And that's what you did, didn't you? You dropped the bars in of the actual sections of how much, like you thought was affected. Well, that's what we did. Yeah,
and then I just went out and gave myself a yield estimate off each of the sites like that, and then worked out that it was worthwhile sticking the sheep in there. We got 8 weeks of good grazing off it. The sheep did really well on it. And the bits that were going to get grain off it, we still pretty much got grain off it, because the sheep hadn't touched that. And we were always in the back of our minds, if it rained, the sheep can go back where they came from.
There you go, so no equipment required, just a KMZ and a little bit of time, I guess, to keep eyeballing the maps. And that's the yield map at the end, which I know it's not perfect, but it is what it is for the zone that it is. So another one here, thanks Dave. Another one here is a client that I deal with on the Eyre Peninsula. He's got a refinator as well, and has an operator. Well, he's got a third sharing one actually, and so when he's got it. He can't really muck around, he just sort of has to get the job done. And he has been using NDVI imagery and Google Earth just to pull out the limestoney areas. Obviously refinating is an expensive operation, and it requires a lot of inputs, fuel and labour and those things. And he's not usually driving it as an owner-operator. He's usually got someone in there, so he needs to sort of tell them where to go so they don't go too rogue. So it's an early season NDVI image, and sure enough, limestone, the crops come out the ground pretty thin, and you can see it on the Google Earth image there. So I've just zoned that up. And I've basically done a rip, don't rip, and I reckon we'll tighten this up again because that's still a massive area to refinate. I think we could pull that in a little bit more, but the reality is that took maybe half an hour and a bit of looking, and we'll just download that as a KMZ, so a Google Earth image. He'll put that on an iPad in the cab, stick it to the console there, and the driver will be able to see where to go and where not to go. So you could do that with lots of things. I've done a similar activity a few times with guys that have wanted to put something out at a high rate, like lime or gypsum, and it's literally a spread, don't spread, or a double rate versus low rate. You can just do a manual, map, and have it in there as a guide as to where your low pH or your gypsum target spots are. This is one on one of our lease blocks between Appler and Bullaroo. just on the bitumen there. So this paddock here, this was a harvest management decision, and we're finding now, given how accurate, I suppose, and reliable NDVI imagery is now in spring, particularly in dry springs, unfortunately, it really shows up soil types, and you can use it for so many things, and also it shows crop dry down. So we have used this map and like NDVI as the, I suppose, the core enabler here. But the other thing that helped us enable to do this was the protein or the crop scan monitor on the header. So it's like a, what would you say, a sensor that's mounted on the header, and apart from your protein maps, you also get moisture data that's quite accurate. So these two paddocks together are 145 hectares, and we were like everybody else, you would just get started harvesting, and then the next rain front would come through last November. So I think we've been going for literally 20 hours, and the next rain event was coming. So we moved down to this block at Appler and put the header in the paddock, moved the bins down, and Joe took a up and back down here sample, and it came back at 9% moisture. So what we decided to do, we thought, oh well, you know, there might be 6 hours worth of harvesting left, but we could either put the header in the corner of the paddock, do nothing, or try something else. So this is the NDVI image on the right here, and as you can see, all the limestone, the canola's dried down significantly more. And the other thing here is that's a landscape change map. So this is showing sort of rises or areas in the field that are slightly higher. So that's limestone ridges. So we thought, oh, we'll stuff it. What have we got to use? We've got like on-the-go moisture samples, and we've had the protein monitor, I think, for 4 years. So we know the moisture is quite accurate. So we thought, we'll stuff it. Let's give it a go. So it's a controlled traffic farming nightmare because we just started chopping. But we went and chopped basically all that red area out, and that all was 6% moisture. So Joe was pretty excited because we had a couple of bins, or a bin full of canola. At that stage it was worth $1,000 a tonne, and it wasn't one of the newer varieties. It was quite prone to shatter, and we've had major shatter issues with canola in the last few years. So anyway, I think we ended up, I think it says the hectares there that we got done. 60 hectares harvested before the rain, and we went out and assessed it after the rain, and there's about 250 kilograms on the ground of what was left. So there you go, simple maths, there's about $14,000-15,000 worth of canola hopefully saved from shatter just in that area. And yeah, a bunch of canola in the bin before the next rain come through, and all of it made it through at about 7%. By the time we mixed the stuff done after the rain and before the rain. So the other thing we've done this sort of theory is with frosted peas. So back in 2017, I've got a tweet on the top of my Twitter page there that sort of explains it, but the frosted peas showed up the opposite. They showed up green as they shot back out, and so we actually repped the frosted peas separately to the rest, and put the frosted peas aside for the sheep and delivered the rest. So yes, sky's the limit with NDVI, and don't just think of it with inputs. There's heaps of stuff you can do. Any questions on that?
When you come doing it, did you just use the PCT app and the current location, and then just follow that map that you created?
Yeah, I just sent it to Joe as a Google Earth. That's what I normally do, just send it as a Google Earth. It's got no attributes or any sort of auto control or anything. It just gives you a guide on where to go, and you then it's just a bit better than by eye, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yep. So I guess that's one thing to say with NDVI imagery. If you can get it in a program that will slice it up to a boundary like that you can then export to Google Earth or to use as a base for a prescription, it just adds a lot of value, because looking at it in an app is one thing, but to then be able to go and use it or compare it to another layer is another. So EM38, not so relevant for the guys around here, but those in that sandy country, using EM38 data for a ripping operation. worked in with Rory on this one. So this sort of explains the EM38 a little bit more. So it obviously puts a negative charge through the, it senses negative charge through the soil by putting a, I suppose, I don't know what you'd call it, a beam through one end of the sensor to the other, and it does dual depth. So this one's set at 75 and 150, but yeah, like Michael said, he'll do 40 and 100, and you sort of get those two depths back as a map. So this is what you end up with as an EM38 map. That's up at Buckleboo on the northern Air Peninsula. So the other one on the right there is a gamma radiometrics map, which I mentioned right at the start has been used a lot, like lower Air Peninsula, around Esperance, where they get a lot of gravelly type soils, gravel and sand together, and can't necessarily distinguish between the two. Dave, this might trigger you with a mining mind, but it can, basically it senses radioactivity in the soil through these 4 bands, and that can be a good indicator also of changes in clay. So hasn't had a lot of use in this side of the range, but I'm really hoping, just talking to a few people and Beth as well, I've flagged this as a blueprint through the Upper North farming systems to hopefully go through and maybe take an EM and a gamma radiometrics survey on some of the soils on the eastern side of the range, right through. I think it would have a fit from Orroroo right through down through to Blythe and right through that area where those soil types aren't as easily defined from an EM38 map. Hopefully pick out some of the differences in the different types of clays. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do that. So, but in this case, as I said, this guy wanted to undertake a ripping operation, quite an expensive process. So Rory went over, did the EM38 surveys, I processed them and presented the maps. And then the grower wanted to put them in the John Deere Operations Centre to use as a guide on his app. So just like using it for Google Earth, and yeah, our software has an open portal to John Deere Ops Centre and AgWorld, so we can sort of flick maps between the programs. So we sent that over, and he used that as a guide to rip to. And then there was 2 other processes that happened to ensure that he was ripping in the right spot. He, I think it was Michael, did some samples to measure the depth to clay, to like validate that the EM38 was a good indicator of where to rip. But then we also went through with the agronomist that was there to take some strategic soil samples like we have at Baroda to actually look at the soil constituents and what we were actually bringing up. So there's the EM38 map, and then there's the map that Michael created on basically red was rip and blue was don't rip. So yeah, it's a pretty simple result, but a lot better than guesswork. And we've already touched on this a little bit today, but if you are taking cores, use something, I suppose a map layer or something that shows you the variability in soil type to try to place those soil cores, because then you can pull these regressions out. So just like we did this morning, your dual EM versus your soil clay percentage and your soil EC is, I suppose, proving to you that your map is showing you where that clay is and what type of clay it is as well. And it's a really typical sort of process for this part of the world with these dune swale systems. So this one here has also been about in a couple of case studies I've been producing, and just like the Baroda fact sheet, I'll be producing a fact sheet on this process as well. But Todoric's just up here at Murraytown. That's the town there, and then yeah, a lot of his farm is sort of in that valley on either side of what you call Main North Road. Heavily prone to frost, but highly productive soil types and a good rainfall. So this paddock here, so that's the bitumen there. That's Murraytown heading up to Melrose. This field here, if you ever drive up that way and look to the right, it's very flat, and it sort of goes up. It's quite a large, long paddock. It goes up to a rise. And basically the frost is year on year, well, probably 4 years in every 5, occurring down this flat, and that's very well indicated in the yield maps that we've been collecting. So Todd doesn't have any soil maps at this stage, but just from yield maps alone and from his own observations, knows that this is absolutely killing him as far as profit goes. So yeah, we've also done some profit maps on this, which is a very simple exercise of putting in income and expense, and I'll actually show him how much money he lost down that end versus how much money he made, which is depressing but also helpful for justifying, I suppose, yeah, tools and resources and maps. So what I'm getting at is these fields, it makes good sense to, I suppose, use precision ag data to track and manage frost. He's sort of got his head around what he's doing with varieties and rotations, and he'll cut hay if he has to, but he would prefer not to because he's not really set up for hay. So his aim with these maps is to understand how badly he's been frosted and how big the frost events are, so that if he can avoid cutting for hay, he will, because he just doesn't have the gear for it. So this is what we've done. It's an elevation map. So we were talking before, an elevation map is something you've probably all got. If you've recorded any sort of data with RTK GPS, this is embedded in yield maps, your seeding maps, anything where you've hit record, this is in there, or you can just always collected EM38 data. So that's what you get with the elevation map. So this is height above sea level, high and low. And then what I've done after that is pulled out what we call the derivatives. So it's still the elevation data, same data, but we can apply, it's called a derivative, but it's basically another map, bonus map that you can pull off of the elevation. So this is a landscape change. So if you imagine this is a couple of limestone ridges here, and it sort of goes down to a lower part of the field. There's a bit of a hill or a point here, but imagine these as like localized, height above sea level, high, low. Landscape change gives you all your changes, I suppose. And so this one in the middle here is a lot more useful for tracking the movement of cold air, because as we know, cold air moves a lot like water. It'll go to the easiest drainage point. So this map in the middle is a good one, I suppose, for understanding frost and cold air movement. Slope here is how steep is that difference in height. So you can see here it actually gets quite steep and these drop away. And aspect is, okay, well, which way does that slope point? Is it north facing, south facing? Not so critical in this scenario, but in some areas, aspect, soil colour, soil type, all contribute to how frost behaves, and how, without going too much into it because I'm not a frost expert, but from what I've learned about it, different colours in soil type can reflect warm and cold air, and also trap warm and cold air, which affects frost. Can you speak to that at all on your observations?
I've seen deep ripping trials before where the deep ripping is a lot less impacted by frost than where it hasn't been deep ripped, and assuming the same things, bringing the clay to the soil, mixing it in, changing that soil colour. But then also potentially removing stubble will reduce frost as well.
That's correct. Yep.
But that's about all I can add.
Yeah, and that could also be to cover it, like with your ripping, if there's more biomass on top, and as to holding that moisture in. There's so many, not moisture, warmth in. There's so many theories on it, but on this occasion we know it's landscape driven. So here's the NDVI map here from 2016, which we know was a ripper season. So we've draped that over, I guess, the 3D image of the field, and that was relatively even. You can see that there's only a variation of about 13% in that NDVI image from September, 2nd of September. This is his yield map from that season. So on the 26th of October, he was absolutely smashed with a frost down this end. And as you can see, that field has yielded 5.4 tonnes to the hectare up the top, which arguably probably could have been the average, given that this soil type is far better than this limestoney, shallowy stuff up here. And the frosted area is 2.53 tonnes to the hectare. So bit of a heartbreaking but typical result for him. So this year, I guess, just to ground truth, that map, that landscape change map, I placed, last year, 10 of these iButton sensors as part of the GRDC Frost Extension project, and also as part of this Agrifutures project at different landscape change locations throughout the field. They're not expensive. They were $69 each plus a little recorder thing, and they record a value every 20 minutes. And yeah, the longer you set them to collect a value, the longer the battery will last, or the memory will last. But they were very easy to use. And then this is where I placed them, so in different landscape change areas, just to see exactly what these areas of the crop were encountering. So on the 21st of October, I downloaded the data for the third time, and it was evident there was a considerable frost event affecting the barley down this end at the low-lying site. And the sensors that were here basically showed that in the 3 months I'd been testing it, it barely dropped below zero. So for the month of August, there was 17 frost events on these two sensors, and here there were none. So I suppose it didn't really tell us anything that we didn't already know from the yield map, but what it did tell us was we were probably underestimating how many frost events actually were occurring here, and it gave us an indication of how far up the hill that actually occurred. So I suppose we did have an indicator of what to expect when the yield map came around. So this is an example of what you see. So these are the two sensors here. And this is it's a bit hard to see the values, but this is the temperature graph. So this is 0 here. So as you can see, I think that's the 12th of the 10th, that was his worst frost event. Even though it wasn't as frequent, that was his worst. Didn't get below 0. So that part of the crop looked quite healthy, despite the fact it hadn't rained there for about 6 weeks. And then this is down on the flat, just near the pub there, on the bitumen there. And you can see that here is 0 here, and that is how many times it dipped below, down to -5 in the month of late September, early October, with that really nasty frost here. So I suppose it just kind of, it's not what you want to know. It's not really what you want to see, but it did sort of prove, what those yield maps were telling us. So
it would give him a good map on where to run a fence line, so he didn't have to, he just graded it every year, couldn't he?
he could.
Lease country.
3 issues.
Lease country.
Yeah, lease country, no sheep, and he's not set up for hay.
Yeah.
So his options are so limited.
Yeah.
But he's at the point now where he can maybe negotiate
Yeah.
how he leases it. Picking like crop types, time of sowing, and where he actually fits that in the rotation, because he is so he is really so limited on what he can do with that. But yeah, that's sort of where he's at. There's another trial that we've run in there. There's a bit going on in that field where we've put out a product called Fire Stick, which, without going into it too much, so I don't have any slides on it in this particular presentation, but we've put out a smoke-derived phenol, I think it's called, and it basically, we put it out on the 5th of October, and at this stage it's showing that where we sprayed it, those passes where the spray has gone have been largely unaffected by frost. So it's inhibiting, as I said, I don't want to go too far into it because it opens up a can of worms, but it's, hey?
Is this easy?
Isonucleating bacteria.
Screams easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got easy written all over it. So I'm talking about that down at Farrell Flat on Friday, but yeah, there's a theory there that the presence of these isonucleating bacteria result in the crop being more frosted. So we've put out this inhibitor of isonucleating bacteria, and it appears, I will say appears, that where we've sprayed it out, there is about a 0.8 of a tonne, so an 800 kilo yield response from where we've put it. Jury's out. We've got to get a lot more analysis on it, so I haven't put any slides on it because I cannot hang my hat on anything, and I'm not a researcher. So
What country does this originate from? Was it a
Australian. It's all food grade product, so that's why it's so exciting. But interestingly enough, in Western Australia, this year I think it's sold out. So I think there's something in it, but there's absolutely no research yet to back it up, and that's why we've gone to put it out. But yeah, there's some interesting slides on it, and I mean I'm just the mapper, but the maps and the strip trials that I've analysed are showing a 0.8 of a tonne response at this stage. So we've just sent some grain plant samples away to Western Australia to be analysed, and yeah, we'll see what they come back with. So watch this space. Alright, is that HDMI? I might swap computers now if that's alright. Just unplug. Or is this connected to the internet? Sorry? No, he's gone.
He's run away.
Right, good on him.
You want yours then?
Yeah, I'll grab mine. My busted one.
You need to charge it too.
No, that should be okay. I'm just real quickly going to go. So yeah, I'll do a fact sheet on everything at Todd's. That'll be released by the end of May, but it's all very exciting. Alrighty.
There's a reason why all that stuff next to the main road used to have a lot of loose and growing
Yeah,
through that valley.
He reckoned it was like market garden type stuff, like they used to grow veggies and stuff in there back when his dad was there. So
That's
they-
not Wolfens, is it?
Yeah. Yep, sure is. So, Beth, do you want me to do the Laura Ag Bureau or the
Yeah, so I thought the urea one, like you could actually make the VR map.
Yep.
And then the Laura one could show how to do the trial.
Oh, yeah.
plan.
Alright. I'll make the VR map first, because then I don't have to get into the strict trial one.
Yeah.
Has anyone here used anything interesting to manage frost or outside the ordinary? It's probably Wi-Fi here, but
There's all that research looking at onion cropping. We've got your actual cash crop and then something that grows above that, all the thermal insulating and stuff, but I generally don't have enough moisture to grow 2 crops, let alone 1.
Yeah.
alright, so this is, I'm just hopped into the PCT Ad Cloud single product prescription builder, and we were going to do phosphorus here, right? Oh no, we're going to do the RX first, aren't we? Yep, there it is. So this here, these are all the map layers available for this field. So there's a lot of imagery being downloaded, but there's also like a lot of yield maps and landscape change and those sorts of things. But we don't have much in the way of soil maps, so we used imagery, didn't we, Beth?
For nitrogen, you'd probably use imagery anyway. Yeah, because essentially you want to know what sort of biomass you've got for that season.
So we're going to use this as our base layer, and I've just smoothed that back to probably don't need to move it, smooth it that much. And then I think you already had some rates calculated out, didn't you?
Yeah, so for that carbonate, so the red I did nothing, because that's at yield potential. Orange technically was nothing as well, but I don't know if you want to spread it or just do 0, 0 and I think it was 75 and 75.
We just had 2 rates, didn't we?
Yeah. But I mean, you could spread that out further if you wanted to, but This week is using the 2 cores.
Like that.
Yep. It's the green one.
40. Sorry.
Oh, I see what you've done, yeah.
Yep. So it'll be 3 zone map. So to be honest, making the prescription is probably the easy bit. If we are disconnected to John Deere Operations Centre, which we don't yet, but it should be, I haven't done it. At the bottom there, you'll just tick yes and save shape files. You can also go send to AgWorld, and then I haven't connected that up either. You just hit save, and it will send it to those 2 platforms, and then spit out a prescription and a report. So when I say a prescription, it will just give us a zipped up shape file, which most controllers will accept, and it will give you your prescription there with your total requirement. And away you go.
Piece of cake.
What was that?
Piece of cake.
As I said, making the prescription is the easy bit. It's getting,
So Jess, if
Or
you're
you ring
taking
Jess
your
and
yield,
say,
like
this is what I want.
yeah.
we've got years and years of yield maps, but where? So do we need this PCT, or like is that what we use to put all of our maps into
This is
a usable format? Like where?
This is where I have to be so careful, because this is what we use, because it's what we've used on our own farm for 15 years.
Yeah.
It's moved from a desktop program through to now the cloud-based program, and because we've got Deere tractors, I worked at Pringles. It
Yeah.
just works, and I can send stuff to TopCon. That's fine, not through the cloud, but I can send it. Really interested to see what TAP's up to, because I think CNH and TopCon are very close to
CNH uses
Yep. moving into here as well. So as I said, I'm universal in the fact that I'll deal with any machinery company or any whatever,
Yeah.
but this is a platform that works for us, and
Yeah.
this is what I use. But
So as a grower, like producer,
Yeah.
would that be something that's
yeah, absolutely.
Like,
You
I
could,
don't know, is that what we need, or is there another program out there that's more like, is that for someone like you, an advisor or an agronomist, or is that for something that we should be using? Like,
So
it's the software that I don't really know. How do we get the info out the header and put it into a usable format for us that we could create our own
I think
map?
this is probably the biggest hurdle to begin with, is choosing a program
Yeah.
that you're happy
Yeah.
with.
So I spent probably 5 or 6 years going that question buzzing around.
Yeah.
By training, I'm a mining engineer. Sitting at a desk looking at computer maps, me, I interpret them. I can do that, but eventually, last year, I just went. I've got too many other things on my plate. I'm better off getting. I get Jess to process my yield mapping now, and that gives me the access to PCT. Not that I'm trying to force, but there's that much software, and they all have limitations. In the end, through this, I'm getting Jess to do all my processing for me. All my maps are there when I want to look at them, and I've got the satellite imagery. I can go in there. I was doing all these RX maps for my own vari-rate nitrogen applications last year after about a half an hour phone call with Jess.
Yeah.
But,
so, yeah.
and that's the other thing, is support. Like, you look at all the other ones, you got to get
Yeah.
comfortable with them.
Someone from Canada or something. 'Cause
Well, as Michael said before too, most of them, it's hard to transfer lines and boundaries or get the files to come in the right format,
Yeah.
and you nearly need to do a bit of post-processing and things like that to get them to come in how you want them.
Yeah.
So it's to be comfortable around the software, and it depends on what colour your tractors are, to what program, what process you put it through to get it into what you want to use it at the end.
a lot of them have a 10-day or whatever trial as well, if you want to
Have a
just
play with
double.
it.
Yeah.
To be honest, if you want to get to a point where you're importing soil tests or dealing with any sort of soil tests or map layers, you really probably got 3 choices to do all of it, and that's SMS, Triple Ag software, or PCT. And then that comes down to whether you want to do it yourself and be able to fiddle around with stuff yourself, or whether you want someone to do it for you. So PCTs is a bit of a different model, where anything in its raw form comes to me, I process it, and then I give it back to you in a login where you can get to it, you share it with your agro, or you can share it with Pringles Crouch or whoever wants to look at it. So to give an example would be, there's a client on the York Peninsula, the one with the refinator before. He's just gone, so he's got quite a lot of Trimble gear and some class gear, but most of his main machinery's just gone to John Deere. And so I worked with the Pringles rep there. He helped him record all his AB lines and control traffic stuff, put that up into the cloud, helped me connect it with PCT, and then I sent all these maps over to John Deere and we worked on it together.
Yeah.
But you could also do that yourself if you wanted to buy the software package. So it comes down to time, what you want to achieve and how much you want to spend, really. And I guess the reason we keep doing these workshops is unless you have a problem you want to solve and you can make money out of it, don't start with it. Because I don't know, my old man always says work with the willing, and if you're not like willing to spend time and money on it and you've got a problem to solve, that's the sad, like not the sad part, but the reality of it is can flash all the toys in front of you in the world, but yeah, you have to want to solve something and make some bucks out of it is probably the thing. So yeah, that's where that coming back to those low-hanging fruit maps right at the start there, and if you got a bunch of lime sitting there that has to be put out or a problem to solve, start there.
Even with Lime, Laurie will do a VR Lime map as part of his mapping services. So that requires you to have no software or anything. So you can still sort of dabble in the VR space without needing to do it yourself. With that type of thing.
Also depends on who you're dealing with agronomy, because most are pretty switched on now. They might not want to process maps for you, but most will be more than willing to help calculate rates or help you recommend what soil layers to collect and all of that. There's help about.
I was telling you before, play around with this for a bit, and I've probably only spent a few days on it, playing around with it, but pretty easy to use, and then Michael and Jen there being Crystal Brook makes it even easier. Yeah, very, very good product.
Probably limitation now is our time. Mine and Michael's time, but that's okay. It's nice to see that people are interested in doing it, because it's been probably a set of massive, all of the GPS and guidance and the control systems have been taken up, and there's some brilliant products there. Topcon's end-turn automation's gone nuts in the last few years. Some products that have really pushed forward, and then this site-specific agronomy stuff has just been so slow. Like there's a few guys that have got their head around it ages ago, but most don't know where to start. So it's pretty common, and it's taken a while for the software to catch up, I think.
A lot of the older software's very, very clunky.
Clunky. Yeah, we even compared John Deere Apex to the Operations Centre now. It's just they're not even the same, close to being the same thing.
And from a growers' point of view, I think this one's very well priced.
And you get your satellite imagery through PCT. What other ones SMS doesn't do though?
They do pretty much everything except satellite imagery. But then satellite imagery is, I've got to send that spreadsheet that's got all that stuff in there. And it's the cost as well. So SMS you'll pay a subscription per year, I think, or for the download, and then a subscription per year, is it? Per year. Yep. And then you can put whatever you like in there.
There's heaps of YouTube videos on SMS if you did go that way.
It's a very handy tool, YouTube.
Yeah. Where was I? Laura Ag Bureau, that's right, weren't we? Alright, so this is, we've just had a look at like a basic rate, zone up, make a prescription. Now we want to look at, we're going to put strip trial in it. Yep. Skip back to the Laura Ag Bureau.
So I think the base layer was the AM, was it the yield?
I think I've already got it up here on, that was our satellite map. Here it is. Sorry, I just stuck over to the strip trial. So the strip trials we haven't really touched at all today, but they're a very important part of our, I suppose, analysis and building up our understanding of a response. So I'm just gonna, I remember I haven't used this for a while now. Not since the last workshop. So what I've grabbed there is my EM map from our layers, smoothed him out, and we'll use that as our base layer. This is going to be phosphorus, isn't it, right? Yep. So then what we're going to do is actually add a strip trial over top, like a long-term prescription trial, and you can do this with anything throughout the season. It might be an enriched strip, could be something like that fire stick, I don't know what you'd call it, snake oil stuff you put out. Oh no, we're going to do a cedar. So this has nothing to do with auto steer, nothing. This is just a guide on, okay, when I come up past number 6, I should be putting out my strip trial now. And this will show in your prescription. Doesn't change any steering, nothing. It does change your rate control though. So we can, I guess, embed it. Now you can import this if you're a TopCon, work on your spherical or your UTM coordinates. You can put your actual header in here or enter in your A point and your B point out of your machine. So it's absolutely perfect. You can even save that AB line in there and use it another time, or load one in from somewhere else if you know what it is. But that's okay, we'll just drop it in there for now. And I haven't got my mouse and it's killing me. Can't do precision ag without a mouse. That's dead. So what we do then is we need to, so our AB lines are on top of our base layer. We need to put in a strip trial now. So let's just say, do you know how many rates you want to test?
3 strips.
3 strips. Oh yeah, that's what we did last time, didn't we? 1 pass per. Yeah. Let me think. Can we go 2? Because then that'll be 3 header widths. So we'll go 2 passes. So with your strip trials, even if you don't, which you most likely won't do any of this process, even if you do throughout the middle of the year go, yep, I'm going to put an enriched strip out there, make sure you hit record and record where you've put it out, because even if you haven't got a prescription to show it, you can go back in manually at the end of the year, show, like, kind of manually draw over where you've put it out based on where your AB line goes, and pull that strip trial back out and redesign it. So I've just put one there because it's an EM map. We want one in that soil type, and then do we just put one here?
I was going to put one in a low phosphorus, low yield zone, so near the main road,
Oh, yeah.
opposite, yeah. Yep, maybe across both the orange and red to capture those 2 zones.
Yeah. And if you can ever get your strip trials in different soil types, so this paddock's a classic example where you've got 3 distinct soil types. No AB line actually straddles the 2 soil types, so you actually have to make 2, if that makes sense, because you want to see what's my response over there versus in another zone. So now, is that okay where it is?
Yep, and then we're going to replicate that in the centre. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So we'll burn that one in, and then we'll put our AB lines back over. No, not going to reload. It's only trouble when you do 2 of them. And we'll put another one, so that should replicate it. Yep. So where do you want the other one?
Yeah, in the centre there, maybe over the green and yellow. If you can get some blue. Probably not.
Right, can I put it somewhere in there?
Yeah.
Alright, so there's our 2 strip trials, and then what we want to do is, what's the high? We'll put our average in the middle.
So we're going to do, so the grower was doing 80 kilos per hectare previously. So we'll do half of that and then double that. So 40 and 160.
Once again, many theories on what rates you should put for your strip trials, but I always go average as a control in the middle, regardless of whether you're doing an average rate over the rest of your field or you're doing a vary rate. And then you want to go a significant, and you might have a theory on this too, but significant way, either way, to, like little increments of 10 or 12 kilos is something like phosphorus. It will be a drop in the ocean. I reckon you probably need to And I don't put rates out of 0 either, just because it's not best practice. You're never going to do that. So, do you want to go very rate behind or just base rate? We could go and
For the rest of the paddock, I think we've just been doing blanket rates to not confuse it, but yeah.
So then you've got the choice. You can either go replacement on the rest, or you can just go base rate. Either way. Before I haven't clicked anything wrong there. There's our prescription, so you can see it's put your average through the middle, your 2 strip trials, and it's put it over top of those 2 EM38 zones, and then we just, like what we were doing there before was actually labelling our zone by rate. This is actually applying the rate. And then, I've missed something. Haven't told us what we're putting out. That would help. Map or DAP?
I think it was map.
And just so our report looks nice, we'll put it out on Anzac Day. And there you go. So there's your prescription, strip trial prescription, and then that's saved in the system. So what would happen then is that would go to the CEDA. The CEDA would record where it actually went out, because you'd be amazed how many times planned versus actual aren't the same. So you get your actual back in, and if you got your John Deere Ops Centre, that will just come in automatically off the tractor. And then at the end of the year, you get your as applied map, yield up over the top, and then you can pull out your response. So I'll do that as a last activity, and then we'll call it a day.
So, sorry, just with the strip trial of phosphorus, I'd suggest doing it at the start of the cereal rotation, because it's going to take a few years potentially to see a response. So you sort of don't want to do it before a legume or something that'll skew results. Do it in your first cereal, and then you've got a few years then to watch it and see what happens. Yep.
So just real quickly, at the end of the year, say you want to analyse something that you've put out and you don't necessarily have like that map that I've just done there. I'll just use an example here. So this is that Wolford's paddock. Now just bear with me because I've got to remember what I'm doing. Okay, so this is where he's sprayed out his product, and I'm hoping that's the right layer. This is just off his Topcon Raven controller, whatever's on a Croplands boom spray. It's just recorded what he's put out. He didn't have a prescription, he just went and sprayed it. Now, depending on how well this goes and how fast it is, this may or may not make the cut of the video. I've had issues with it in the past. So there you go, that's where he sprayed it out in the paddock. And what we need to do now is actually turn that into something that we can use. And as I said, I've got to remember how to do this. So we'll fill the gaps because that is sprayed. So as you can see, the controller always has a little bit of wobble in it as to litres per hectare, but basically that's all 2 litres per hectare with a bit of give or take. Rest of the paddock is nothing. So I'm just going to fill in the nothing at the moment. And then I'll show you how to, if you don't have any sort of prescription or vary rate, how you can analyse it with a yield map. Maybe. It always takes a long time. Alright. So that's filled in the rest. So once again, we'll just really quickly add those AB lights in there. 36 metre sprayer. We want to pick a really nice long run because we want to know exactly, that we've got the same AB line as the yield map, the harvester and the sprayer. So we want to pick a nice long straight run where there's the best chance of those machines actually recording a nice accurate chunk of data. So there's our AB line. Now let's add our test strips over the top. So we're just going to pretend that we're just going to pick a slice of what he's put out versus not put out to analyse our trial. So he's done 1 replicate and 2 products, which is sprayed and not sprayed. And let's pick a nice long strip here, bearing in mind that this paddock is quite big. So that strip trial there is actually 300 metres, so let's make it 500. So there we go, we've dropped it over top of sprayed versus not sprayed. And now we only want to look at the pink bits, because the rest of the paddock we just want to ignore. So let's call that one 2, call that one 0 because he hasn't sprayed there. Alright, and there's our strip trial analyzer. So that's what we can do if you haven't used a prescription. We can just go back and draw over top of where you've gone. So if I give that a second, doesn't look like much, but now let's add our barley yield map over the top, which is processed data, but I've left it in its swaths because remember how I said all day how when you record data it will smooth to fill in the gaps. We don't want any smoothing because we just want exactly what the header's recorded over exactly what the sprayer has put out. Remembering that a header's 12 metres, sprayer's 36, so there's 3 nice header widths with the controlled traffic system. And look at that, so that's our response there. So where the product was sprayed, 3.76 tonne to the hectare, and where the product wasn't sprayed, 2.92. So we can actually go through and grab that. We can save it. We can go back and put in some costs. So how much did that product cost me to spray out? And it will calculate all of that cost benefit stuff for you if you want to punch all that stuff in. How much did I receive per tonne of grain? All that sort of stuff you can put in and generate a report. So I suppose the point I'm trying to get at is you don't have to have everything. You don't have to have controllers on everything, and there's a workaround for nearly everything if you want to have a go. Any questions on that? So that's essentially the analytics tool in PCT, which you wouldn't really see much of at all because that's the bit that we do. The view tool is what the grower would see, and this is where all your map layers are. So inside this interface. So with that, unless there's any questions about any of that, I'll probably wrap up and call it a day because we're way over. Any questions? Has everyone picked up something new that they didn't know at 9 o'clock? That's all I can ask for. Excellent. No, well, that's good. Well, thank you to Beth, Michael, Kane, is it, for coming from PopCon. Joy, you came a really long way today, but mostly to Up North Farming Systems and Agrifutures who have funded it, and of course Big Day Productions who are going to put this together for us in a tutorial. So if you want to go back on anything today or give this link to somebody else, you absolutely can. We're going to load them to our YouTube channel and put them on the Up North Farming Systems as a resource. So